Hello, this is Jason Call. I am candidate for Washington State's 2nd Congressional District, and I am here doing a live TikTok Q&A, and I'm here for anybody to ask me any questions about my campaign, things that I support. If you have any questions about the incumbent, about why I'm running as a Green Party member, truth is that we have the best chance in the entire country in this district to get a Green member of Congress. That is myself. And I am here basically letting you guys know what I'm about. Hopefully, I can get some support. As you might know, it's probably since I've run this campaign as a Democrat, I can tell you that it is better to be running as a Green, but it's also harder to be running as a Green because running campaigns does take funding, and it is much harder to raise money when you are outside of the corporate duopoly. But this is definitely where I belong, standing on principle for progressive policies like Medicare for all, addressing climate change, stopping the genocide in Gaza, reducing the military-industrial complex funding and presence around the world. So basically, what I would like to do is just open it up to anybody. I will keep talking until I see some questions. But if you have questions for me, please let me know. I think we can start off with probably like climate change. As you might be aware if you have been tracking climate over the last few years at least. But I've been tracking climate for 25, 30 years. I've been an activist for 35 years since I was in college. And clearly the trends for climate are not great for the future. We are hitting right now in the first week of January, first week and a half of January, we are hitting global anomaly temperatures that are really off the charts. I mean, a year ago in January, we are way beyond what the anomalies were even a year ago. Part of the reason for that is that what scientists are finding out is that as we continue to release more emissions, because nobody around the world, nobody is serious about getting off of fossil fuels, which is really the only pathway. The only pathway to a secure future is we have to get off of fossil fuels. But because emissions keep being released, Joe Biden's drilling more, and around the world, it's not just America. It is really around the world. Nobody's tackling climate change in a serious level. I mean, the Paris Accords, they're pretty much meaningless to where we are right now. The standards for Paris Accords, we have eclipsed that. We're going to be hitting that 1.5 degrees Celsius increase from industrial times next year, probably next year, if not this year. I mean, there are days that we had in the past year where we hit above 1.5 for the median for the last 30 years. But it's not a good situation for climate right now. And again, the only answer is to get off of fossil fuels and make sure that we have renewable and sustainable energy systems. And we really need to address capitalism and consumption because we have a very consumption-driven model of economy. And unless we figure out how to be less consumptive, because so much of our consumption is reliant on fossil fuels right now, we're not going to see our way out of this. And so I'm certainly extremely worried for my kids and the future. I mean, I've got probably another 30 years on this planet, but my kids, 17 and 20 years old, they've, got 50, 60, 70 years left. And it's not looking good very quickly. So the only way is to get off of fossil fuels, and we certainly do not have a government that is minded. I mean, regardless of what the Democrats say about most climate spending ever with the infrastructure bill. I'm a former math teacher, spent 20 years in the classroom, and one of our principles is multiply anything by nothing, you still got nothing. So most climate spending ever is a meaningless statement. It's a meaningless statement when nobody has spent any serious money on climate action in the past. So the spending for climate action in the infrastructure bill is 7%, at most 7% of the military budget. And the military is, the U.S. military, is the largest non-state emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. If it was a country, it would rank somewhere in the mid-20s of greenhouse gas emissions. And so nobody's doing anything to reduce military emissions. And so to take money that is just a small fraction of what we're spending on the military and say, hey, we're going to address climate change with this, or we're making any strides for climate change with this, it's farcical. It's ridiculous. It's, so Joe Biden's not addressing climate change. And part of the reason that I am with the Green Party is that the Green Party is an eco-socialist party. I mean, addressing climate change is one of the primary principles of the Green Party. And, we're not going to address climate change while we are under the thumb of the corporate duopoly. The Republicans, certainly not the Republicans, but the Democrats. I mean, what's more insidious about the Democrats is that they have people fooled that they want to address climate, that they're going to address climate. Just give us some time. Give us some time. We're getting it worked out. They're not getting it worked out. They're owned by the fossil fuel industry. They're owned by the war machine. And so Democrats are not going to save the future. I mean, that's actually a big message of my campaign and why I'm running, and why it is important to have a Green Party presence in Congress. So, going back to my race, if I get elected this year, I will be the first Green Party member of Congress ever elected. And people tell me, well, what are you gonna, do you think you can get anything passed? Well, I mean, let's realistically talk about what I could do as an individual in Congress. People tell me you have to make coalitions. You have to work with people. Well, I know that. I know that, but I'm going to stand on principle. And I think what's really important is to have a voice that is not the same voice. And I don't mean just replacing the incumbent, but I'm talking about the entirety of Congress is, for the most part, the same voice. You've got a handful of people who address, the Green New Deal. You've got the Squad, and you've got, people like Jeff Merkley in the Senate and Bernie in the Senate, and they want to talk about climate, but they don't want to challenge capitalism, right? So if we don't have a voice in Congress challenging this trope that, we have to be, America is a capitalist nation, and capitalism equates to democracy and equates to freedom. None of that is true. And I think with the oppression of the working class in this country, it's apparent that people in this country aren't free. I mean, we're oppressed by police. We're oppressed by our working conditions. If you're homeless, you're certainly oppressed. If you don't have health care, you're certainly oppressed. So, capitalism pretty much means you have the freedom to, work your fingers to the bone, and maybe not make rent. I mean, we have people in this country working people, people who are actually have jobs and can't afford rent. So, for this idea that capitalism is America, it may be at this current point in time, but it doesn't have to be. There's nothing in the Constitution that mandates America has to have a capitalist economy. It's not in there. But what I want to do is be that voice outside of the capitalist system, and just really point the finger and say, look, the problems that we have in this country that most people recognize, climate being one of them, but healthcare, housing, economy, most people recognize that a lot of people in this country are really, really struggling. I mean, the Democrats can talk all they want about job growth, but if your job is not helping you pay your bills and you're working 40 hours a week, I go back to George Bush in the mid 2000s when he was having a talk with, somebody on stage, stump speech, and she says, well, I'm working 3 jobs. And he says, well, isn't that uniquely American? Well, yeah, it is uniquely American. because it's uniquely American to work three jobs and still not to be able to pay your bills, or to have to work three jobs in order to pay your bills. So, we shouldn't have seniors in this country. You should be able to retire when you're 65. You should have a safety net. Of course, the Republicans want to gut the safety net, but the Democrats don't want to protect it. I mean, they talk about wanting to protect it, but they don't really want to protect it. So they're not going to fight to protect it because they're on the hook to the banking industry and they're on the hook to the real estate industry. So what do we do? We have to have a voice in Congress that is not a standard voice, right? They're not repeating the same old thing and essentially being in lockstep. You need to have somebody like, if I was to model what I would want to be in Congress right now, the person that I'm looking at for challenging systems is Claire Daly, who's an Irish member of Parliament and also represents Ireland at the EU. And I think she's fantastic, constantly challenging capitalist systems and warmongers and not just not just the war machine, but all sorts of industries that are keeping people generally oppressed. So that's why I'm running. Do I think that a Green Party member in Congress is going to be able to get it all done? No, I mean, I don't think it's realistic that a Green Party member in their first term, fantastic. Yeah, she's absolutely amazing, and I watch everything that she puts online. But do I think that my voice alone is enough to change things immediately? Well, you get to Congress, you're not going to be able to pass Medicare for all. You have to convince people. Of course I do. But where's the pressure going to come from? Is the pressure going to come from me, or is it going to come from the American public? So what I want to do, like, imagine if a Green Party member gets elected to Congress. I mean, I'm going to get media attention, right? It will be a phenomenon. It will be a national platform. What am I going to do with that platform? Am I going to go along to get along with the capitalists? No, I'm not. I'm gonna speak out, and I'm going to speak out forcefully. I'm going to say, look, I've got this platform. My district elected me to speak to these issues, and I'm going to speak to these issues. Another thing that's interesting is Democrats have asked me, like, because I'm not a very compromising person, when it comes to principles. No, I want to make sure people are housed, and I want to make sure people are fed, and I want to make sure people are not going bankrupt from medical debt. So I'm not very compromising on these issues. Like, Medicare for all is what we need. I'm not going to be happy with anything but, and actually Medicare for all is even like the least of it. Like, what we really need is a national health service like they have in the UK, where the hospitals are government owned and the doctors are paid by the government. And there isn't a profit motive, right? There isn't a profit motive for the healthcare industry. And you see what the conservatives have done and when I say conservatives, I mean Tories and the Labour government, because Keir Starmer's Labour government is pretty much a conservative government also. But when the Tories were in power, from 2013 to 2020, there was a lot of privatization attempts. Privatize this part, privatize that part of the NHS, where it had all previously been fully public. And they did a study, the Lancet Journal did a study of that 7-year span, and they definitively linked increased privatization of healthcare services with, get this, preventable mortality. And I think if people understood that privatization of healthcare is bad, it literally kills people. There's you can't argue your way around it. Privatized healthcare literally kills people. So people say, oh, well, what about having to wait in lines? Have you been to American doctors? You have to wait. We have a largely privatized healthcare system. You got private insurance, and people have Medicare, and That's government funded, but the doctors are all still private. The hospitals are all still private, unless you're in the VA, then it's government facility. And the reason the VA is actually probably the best healthcare system on paper. Like if we could get the VA fully funded and have it for everybody, that would be fantastic. Well, what are the problems with the VA? It's not funded and it's not staffed. So yeah, they complain, oh, your government can't do this. Well, it's Congress that's not funding it, right? I mean, if Congress appropriates the money to the VA, then the VA is funded. Why, so people just don't seem to put that together. It's not the system, it's the funding of the system. So anyway, this idea that the study did, the Lancet study for the UK's NHS, that there's a direct link of privatized health services and preventable mortality. I think if everybody knew that and understood that, there'd be no question. Oh yeah, we should not have privatized healthcare. And the other thing is the insurance model, the private insurance model of healthcare is an exclusionary model, right? They're in business, like people have this, they call private insurance companies providers, right? Talk to your healthcare provider, call your provider. Are you in network or out of network, your provider? Well, the health insurance companies are not the providers. Doctors are providers and nurses are providers and specialists and therapists. Those are the providers, the people who actually do the work. The health insurance companies are actually the deniers, right? When it comes right down to it, because they want to make money off of your illness, right? So they will deny you care if they don't think that they're going to make money off. I mean, it's a balance, right? So they'll treat some things and they will let other things go. We're not going to cover this, but their goal is not to ensure that you have health care. Anybody who thinks that a private insurance company, Blue Cross Blue Shield or, Cigna or however many are out there, Kaiser Permanente, one of the worst, right? But if you think that their goal is to ensure that you have health care, you have been completely fooled. Their goal is to make money. And the way they make money is that they exclude people from the healthcare system. So one of the reasons, getting into the little policy weeds here, like why do I not support a public option? Because some people say, well, let's try a public option before we go to, Medicare for all. Why can't we do this go-between? And some people who want to have private insurance can have it. Okay, well, what you're doing with the public option is private insurance companies can then exclude the people that they want to cover. So private insurance companies will continue to make money off of relatively healthy people, and when I say relatively healthy people, that's not a judgment call. Some people have health concerns, whereas other people don't. Some people can live terrible lifestyles, like ostensibly terrible lifestyles, and they don't get sick. And some people are chronically ill, and they do their best to stay healthy, and yet they are chronically ill, right? So some people cost the health insurance system more. That's just the way it goes. That's the diversity of the human population. So is our goal to make sure everybody has health care? Then you got to treat everybody. Well, what private insurance will do is they will keep all the people who are, the healthiest people, and those people will pay premiums, and the insurance companies will have to pay out minimally, and they will make a lot of money because those people are healthy and they don't need the services. Well, what's the public option going to do? So the private insurance companies say, well, if we're going to insure this person, we're going to charge X and X and X premium. It's going to be a big premium, right? Because, unhealthy people, they don't want to insure them. They want them to pay into the system so that they can, if they have to pay out, then they've sucked up as much money as they can from those people. So all those people are going to go to the public system, right? And the public system is going to need to spend a lot of money on those people because those are all the unhealthy people. Now, I'm saying this, no judgment whatsoever, healthy versus unhealthy. It's just people who need services versus people who don't need services. So all of the people who need the most services, critical services, are going to go into the public system because the private insurance company is going to exclude them. And then you're gonna look at the public option needing to be massively funded, right? They're going to need to be massively funded in order to serve those. And then you're going to have politicians saying, well, look, the public option is costing us so much money. We're only covering X amount of people, and it's massively expensive for us to do that. Right. Because all of the sickest people and all of the most needy people, you put them in one pool, the public pool, right? That's what you did. While the private insurance companies are making bank off of the healthier people. So that's why I'm completely against a public option. We need to make a clean break. Because the idea of risk is that the bigger the pool is, the more the risk is spread out. So I don't buy, and so what is our goal? Is our goal to actually make sure people get healthcare, or is our goal to let companies make money off of healthcare? Well, right now, we have two corporate parties who are completely in the bag for the private health insurance industry, right? So they're taking campaign funding from these companies, and in turn, they are denying essentially a universal, free at the point of service public healthcare system. So we have to get that done. And so if I get a national platform, in Congress, those are the things that I'm going to say on the floor of Congress. I'm going to tell the truth loudly to the American people that the health insurance companies, or the private health insurance industry, it's a parasitic industry. It serves no purpose. All it does is deny people health care, And so if we take that risk pool of the entirety of the American people and we say, this is our risk pool, and everybody's going to pay in a little bit, but that paying in a little bit is going to make sure that everybody gets the services. And we don't have that right now. Private insurance companies right now, I think we still have 30 million people in this country who aren't insured. I mean, they can't get insurance for one reason or another. Either they're too sick and insurance companies won't cover them, and they're not eligible for Whoops. Let me see here. I think I might be having a power issue. Let me see if I can change this right here and see if that'll work. So I mean, we've just got a massively dysfunctional system, and we absolutely cannot stay with the healthcare system that we have right now, especially with, as I said, the definitive link that the more healthcare is privatized, the more people are going to die unnecessarily. So we really got to think about, what our priorities and what our principles are. And the other thing with that, people argue, so we can tie these two things together. People will argue that, it's a really, like, people say this and I'm like, I don't know where you're coming from with this. Well, we don't have enough hospitals and clinics and doctors to serve everybody. They're like worried about an influx of 30 million people into the healthcare system. Like, so you're okay with that? You're okay with just ritually excluding 30 million people because we don't have... I mean, the solution is we need more doctors and nurses, right? Well, what's the prevention from doctors and us having the doctors and nurses that we need? Well, one, because we don't have enough doctors and nurses, particularly nurses who really bear the bulk of the stress of the healthcare system, and don't get paid nearly enough for it. That people don't want to go. People are like not wanting to go into college to be a doctor. I mean, it's 8 years, 12 years if you're going to be a specialist. People don't want to go into healthcare anymore because they don't want to come out of it with massive amounts of debt. Right? That's where our college system is right now. First thing that a doctor does when he graduates is think like, shit, I got to pay off $250,000 in debt. So we don't have a system that is set up for people to really, like, it used to be a prestige thing. I remember back in the 80s, like, people wanted to be doctors and lawyers. Why? Because you can make a lot of money. But back then, when I went to college, I started college in 1989. It was less than $10,000 a year, and that included living expenses. That wasn't just tuition. That was tuition, books, room and board. It's less than $10,000 a year. Now it's over 40,000, right? And people's wages have not quadrupled. Like people's income has not quadrupled. So you take on college and you're almost automatically taking on a massive amount of debt. If you're lucky enough to private pay for it, great, then you're probably set up anyway. But if you have to take on college debt, the first thing you're going to be looking at when you graduate is paying off that debt. And doctors are going to have massive amount of debt because they've got to be in there for minimum 8 years. Like I said, if you go for a specialty, sometimes it's 12 years of college. So people are unwilling to take on that debt right now. So what's the obvious answer? If we want a healthcare system that's functional, we do have to have enough doctors and nurses to cover all of those services. And so we've got to get rid of this this exorbitant cost of college debt. We've got almost $2 trillion in student loans right now. And most of it has been accumulated like in the last 15 years. Like I don't remember exactly the date, but I was looking at a chart like back in 2003, back in 2005-ish, there was only like $300,000 $300 million in accumulated college debt. You know, it sounds like a lot, but now we are like 6-7 times that much. We're approaching $2 trillion. Did I say 300 million? I meant 300 billion. So the numbers get lost there. But, you know, still relative to where we are today, we've got like, you know, at least 6 times as much college debt today as we did like 15 years ago. So people aren't getting any relief, and it really all goes to it really all points to capitalism is so extractive, right? So it extracts your labor, and even if you buy into something, like we would want more doctors and nurses, but then we're asking people to, you know, take on $250,000 in debt, which is the first thing that they're going to want to be paying off, and you know, it's not a system that is conducive to having, like the education system. The cost of the education system is in itself not conducive to having a functioning healthcare system, because we're simply not getting the staffing out of it, you know. And then because we don't have the staffing that we actually need, the people who are in this healthcare system are incredibly stressed out because they're, you know, they can't work a standard shift. I mean, they've got to work long hours and for low pay. We have these private hospitals where CEOs, like my wife works at Providence Everett here, and I was with the striking nurses a few weeks ago. They went on a 3-day strike, but my wife is not a nurse. She's a radiation therapist, so she treats people who have cancer. She runs the radiation machines, and it's a skilled job. I mean, she you know, and nurses are important to that job. But what was my point? I forget what my point was. The CEO, right? Providence. So Providence is a regional group of hospitals. CEO, $10.5 million. CEO makes $10.5 million while they can't pay their nurses a living wage. And the issue with the nursing shortage is or the things that the nurses are wanting to strike over is not just pay. It's the fact that if they are understaffed, their patients are not getting the care that they need. So, you know, these things really go together. The education system and the healthcare system, they are really tied together in whether, you know, we have a functional healthcare system. We also have to have a functional education system that does not saddle people with $100,000, $200,000 in debt because they wanted to become a doctor, you know. So, all right. So we've covered healthcare. We've covered climate. We've covered the education system. Does anybody want to ask me any questions? I'll talk about my race a little bit. I'm running for Washington State's 2nd district. The district is a little bit north of Seattle. Starts about 20 miles north of Seattle and goes all the way up to the Canadian border. And if you're familiar with the geography of Washington State, we've got these big islands in the Puget Sound. Those islands are part of my district, Whidbey Island and the San Juan Islands. Covers about 6,000 square miles. We've got a lot of colleges here, a lot of like community colleges. We got Western Washington University, Washington State University's got a branch campus here. And it is an ostensibly progressive district, but we have not had progressive representation. In fact, the guy who has held the seat in this district since 2000, which if if you're concerned about term limits, here's a guy who's been in for 12 terms. If he gets reelected again, it'll be his 13th term. So we're going to work hard to prevent that. He is one of the most conservative members of the Democratic Party overall. And my assessment of that is simply his voting record and his corporate funding. So I would encourage you to go to my website. My website is callforcongress.com. You see my name there in the back, CALL, callforcongress.com. No, Bainbridge Island is not part of my district. That is the 6th Congressional District, which is currently held by Derek Kilmer, who's not seeking another term. So there's a whole big old race going on in the 6th District, but not me. Anyway, this guy, Rick Larsen, on the hook to the fossil fuel industry, takes money from ExxonMobil, Marathon, Sinclair. And I say that like they don't all. Of course they do. I mean, the Democratic Party, this is why I say we've got to make a change, a big change. Why the Democratic Party is not going to address climate change, because they're all taking money from the fossil fuel industry. But this guy's one of the worst. I'll give you an idea of how bad he is on climate. So less than a year after Deepwater Horizon, I think it was the worst oil spill since the Exxon Valdez, which happened in '89 when I was in high school. And less than a year after Deepwater Horizon, which devastated the Gulf of Mexico, devastated coastlines all along Louisiana, Texas, Florida. Less than a year, he voted to continue offshore drilling in the Gulf. I mean, that's, he's a fossil fuel guy. He's not, but he's also a war machine guy. He was, this year, he is his first year that he's not on House Armed Services. So he was a career member of the House Armed Services Committee, while taking, and this is just, let me express an extreme dysfunction of Congress. You should not be, first of all, we shouldn't have corporate campaign funding at all. I mean, that just should be, we should have publicly funded elections. But if you're sitting on a committee that is an oversight and regulatory committee, you should not be taking money from the industries that you're regulating. I mean, that is a fox guarding the henhouse situation. So, Rick Larsen, career member of House Armed Services, while taking bags of money from Boeing, which is our largest employer in the district, and Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and Honeywell and Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics, which, by the way, he is invested in as far as stock goes. So there's a massive conflict of interest there. So we've got the war machine, we've got the fossil fuel industry, and he was on the Transportation Committee. That was his other committee. Now, he is now the ranking member, the ranking Democrat of House Transportation. He's not the chair of House Transportation because the Democrats don't have control of the House. But if the Democrats did have control of the House, he would be the chair of the Transportation Committee. And he takes money from the airline industry. He takes money from, all sorts of transportation-related industries. And again, going back to this idea of if you are a regulator, if your job, and that's what Congress's job should be, it should be a regulation body for the protection of the public. And it's simply not, because they're all bought off by the industries that they're supposed to regulate. So you do not want a guy like Rick Larsen on the hook to the fossil fuel industry in charge of the Transportation Committee, because we have to get green, sustainable transportation systems in this country. And he's not the one to do it, because the industries who are funding his campaigns don't care about that, right? They care about continuing to burn fossil fuels, because that's where they're making their money. Fossil fuels are making their money. The transportation industry is making their money off of this also. They want to keep cars on the road. They don't want an effective rail system, which is what we really need to have. We need to have effective rail high-speed cross-country, fine, but also local commuter rail, also freight rail. You know, we most of this freight in this country is shipped on over-the-road trucking, right? Which is massively polluting, right? Over the road is massively polluting trucking industry. And so we need to switch our transportation systems to rail systems and, you know, local mass transit, which should be free at the point of service. So this guy, and if you've looked at, I forget the name of the bill that House Transportation had written, like their plans for transportation, they were like, well, we want to invest in, oh God, I wish I didn't come with the numbers, but in terms of investment in like electric buses, what they want to do to expand the electric bus fleet across the country, it's pitiful. It's absolutely pitiful. They don't have any serious plans for rail. And it's because the people who are running these committees are really working for the industry and they're not working for the public. So again, why does somebody like me need to be elected to Congress? Because I will get on the floor of Congress and I will get in front of the media and I will come back to my district and I will go national live and I will talk about these issues as an elected Green member of Congress. This is why your current elected officials are completely failing you, right? They're completely failing the future because they are bought, because it's a corrupt system, right? Which again goes to, you know, me. I don't take any corporate money. My campaign is fully grassroots funded. People give us, I don't know, we just did our most of our FEC filing for the fourth quarter, which is beginning of October to the end of December. I haven't looked at the averages of the numbers, but you know, I ran my last two campaigns. Our average donation was like $22. Right. So we've got people giving us $2. We got people giving us $5. We got, we got a couple people who will give us a couple $100, $250. We got one guy who's giving us $500, local friend of mine, but we're not, people aren't maxing out to us. The people who typically would want to see somebody like me in office, are not wealthy people, but it's the larger group of people, right? So, appeal for people to fund my campaign. If you can kick in $10, $15, $25 a month recurring, if we had a lot of people doing that, we could compete. But the guy I'm running against, he raises $1 million every cycle, but 70% of that, like fully 2/3 of that comes from PACs. It doesn't come from, individual people. In fact, in the last cycle, we had over 75% of our donors were what's considered small donors, which means they're giving us less than $200, right? He has about 5% of his donors giving him less than $200. And that right there, sort of that tail of the tape right there tells you who he's working for, who is giving him money. So mostly it's PACs. And the majority of the PACs are industry PACs. Like I said, he argues like, well, corporations aren't allowed to give us money. That's illegal. And it's true. A corporation can't. But a corporation has a PAC, right? A political action committee, and they can give money through that PAC. I mean, it's bribery, right? it's lobbyist bribery. But he can say, well, that's people. PACs are people. People put into that PAC. Yeah, that's executives from companies giving to that PAC so that the PAC can then give it to him, and they say, "Oh, that's legal. That's not bribery." Well, we need a public financing system. That's just the long and short of it. We absolutely need a public campaign financing system, and it can be done, but you don't see a whole lot of members of Congress advocating for it because they are not there for the same reasons that I want to be there. And I made a post on Twitter the other day that, if I was a one-term congressman, I would use my power to do, exactly what I'm telling you I'm going to do, which is speak truth to the issues publicly. Well, what if that means they come after you and you're not going to get reelected again? Did my presence in that 1 year with that national platform, did that wake some people up around the country? Did it lay the foundation for other people to get elected on those principles? If the answer to that is yes, then I don't need to be there for more than 1 year. Like, I'm not doing this to be a career politician. I'm doing it because we are in crisis, right? And I want to help solve the crisis. I'm not trying to enrich myself. Another thing I've said, and you can see this is actually my pinned tweet on Twitter, is if I get elected, I'm going to donate 30% of my post tax salary. So I get a paycheck. I'm going to take 30% of that paycheck. I'm going to donate it to strike funds and mutual aid, right? So I think that is, I don't need, like, I don't live an extra. I'm not the investor class, right? I want to be able to pay my bills, and I want to be able to, I guess live comfortably, like, and not be stressed out the way, I am right now, because, I don't make a ton of money. I mean, I'm working class, and not to get into, too much about my personal life, but we've been struggling here. My wife has had breast cancer the last couple of years, and she will be okay, but she hasn't been able to work, and so it's been a big financial hit. So, like, I could look at a congressional salary, which is $174,000, and I could say, "Hey, I'm there to get rich." No, that's not my purpose. I will commit to give 30% of that away, and I can definitely live comfortably on the remainder. So I'm not there to, and I'm certainly not there to set myself up for a lobbying career. And that's another thing about the incumbent right now is he can get a lobbying job. In fact, he came from the lobbying industry. He was a lobbyist for the Washington State Dental Association for 6 or 7 years prior to being elected to Congress. So he can go right back to the lobbying career, and lobbyists make a lot of money. I'm not going to be lobbying for anybody. I will lobby for issues like single payer healthcare and demilitarization and making sure people have housing. But that's not that's not high paying lobbying right there. That's just activist lobbying. So anyway. That's really my purpose in Congress. My purpose in Congress, should I be elected, and I really hope I will, and I think we've got a good chance this year. I think people are really, with everything that's going on, again, healthcare crisis, climate crisis, nothing's getting better. I mean, let's just be frank about this. Nothing is getting better. I just, thinking about the PPP loans. Do you know that 72% of the almost $800 billion in PPP loans went to the top 20% of income earners in this country? That money was supposed to be for working classes, for businesses to stay afloat so that they could pay their workers. Well, most of it went to the ownership class, and then 96% of it. This is what really irks me, is we've got so much student debt in this country. We've got almost $2 trillion in student debt in this country, but all of those 96% of those PPP loans got forgiven. So that was free money that got taken out of your pocket and given to people who are already wealthy, for the most part, right? For the most part, where people who are struggling to pay rent because they're saddled with student debt, they can't get relief. So a few people did, but mostly people can't get. I got to write a check again to pay back my student loans. I've been paying them back since October. Anyway, so the situation is not great, and I hope that there is sort of a confluence of situations here that wakes people up to say, hey, we really need a new voice, we really need a new direction, and that's the Green Party. And also I'll talk briefly about the presidency. I'm fully in support of Jill Stein. I think she's a great person. Haven't met her in person, but I am going to the Palestine protest in Washington, D.C. next week. In fact, it's not next week. It's like 5 days. So I'm flying out to D.C. on Friday with a fairly large contingent of people here in my local area. And so we're going to join the march, and I'm going to, Jill Stein is a speaker there. And I am going to meet with her, talk with her about some things, but she's a great person. I've had phone conversations with her. She's super smart. She's kind. She's humble. And we definitely need new administrative leadership in this country. We need a new vision, because the corporate capitalist duopoly they're both pointed in the same direction, and it's the wrong direction. People who think the Democrats are better than Republicans. You can make your assessments of whether the Democrats are as bad as the Republicans, and certainly the Republicans are worse on a number of issues. But in terms of the direction that both parties are pointed, they're both pointed in the same direction. Like, my friend Lee Carter, who is in Virginia, he was a member of the Virginia State Legislature until the last cycle. Lee Carter was the guy who got Virginia to reduce its insulin prices to $35 a month, cap insulin at $35 a month. So, thank you. I like my hair too. You should see it when it's long. I've had it down. I'm a bass player. You can see my bass guitars back there, but I'm a heavy metal bass player, so I've had long hair. But anyway, he said about the Democratic Party in terms of like, do we owe the Democrats our vote because they are not as bad as the Republicans, which is, that's arguable. I don't even want to have that argument, because it's, either way it's bad and worse. Either way you look at it. But he said about the Democrats, like, are you going to make things better? And the answer is no. Democrats are not going to make things better. Are you going to stop things from getting worse? Also, no. The Democrats are not only not making things better, they're not stopping things from getting worse. And we are at a point right now where we can't afford that. Like, the future is precarious. I think climate is going to be the biggest driver here of what will wake people up, right? Again, I started this live stream saying where we are in terms of global temperature anomalies right now, 6 standard deviations above the median over the last 30 years. That's phenomenal, because it was only 2 or so standard deviations at this point last year. So we have large parts of the planet that are unsustainable, just unsustainable, and heading towards like long-term. Like, I saw maps of India right now and the temperature anomalies in India right now. Like, there's coming a point where we're going to see massive crop failures because crops can't grow in those conditions. And when you talk about a country like India, where there's over 1 billion people, I think there's like 1.2 billion people in India. It's the second most populous nation behind China. What are you going to do when 1.2 billion people are starving because their crops failed? That's coming. I don't want to sugarcoat anything. That is coming, because nobody in the Western world, and let's be honest, it's the Europeans and the United States, and to some degree China, and to some degree Russia, but really Europe and the United States and Canada, they drive the world economy. Well, they're not driving it in the right direction, and we're going to end up with people in the global South starving by the billions. It is coming. I want you to understand that it is coming, and with the global ice melt that we're seeing, the polar ice melt that we're seeing right now, the fact that the West Antarctica ice shelf is extremely unstable. Sorry, my battery's going again. We have less sea ice at both poles than we've had for in measurable history. And we also have this instability in the Western Antarctic ice shelf of these glaciers that are going to break free. And there's one called the Doomsday Glacier, it's the Thwaites Glacier. If that glacier breaks, what it does is it causes a wave of instability with 5 or 6 other glaciers that it's holding back. They are all going to fail. That's where we're going to see like 10-foot sea rises relatively immediately. Not like instantly, but pretty quickly. You're going to end up with countries like Vietnam and these low-lying coastal countries, Vietnam, Bangladesh, just 400 million people in Bangladesh. Like, the entire country's going to get flooded. So then you're talking about climate refugees. So where are those people going to go? Assuming that they can be saved, assuming that they can get out of there. That's what global capitalism has done to our planet and is actively doing to our planet right now. It's not pretty, and I will never sugarcoat it. I am always looking at this as, what is the worst case scenario? Because the worst case scenario is really fucking bad for a lot of people. We're not going to feel it so much in the United States because we're the wealthiest nation on earth. But the poorest people in our country will, because they always do, right? That's why you see Mark Zuckerberg, he's building a bunker, right? The rich are building bunkers. They know what's coming. And they're not letting on, and they're also not changing direction. So that's the Democrats and the Republicans. Both pointed in the wrong direction. Maybe the Democrats are going in the wrong direction a little bit slower, but mark my words, both going in the wrong direction. That's why we need absolutely new leadership and new vision for not just this country, but for the entire world. Again, going back to Claire Daly, that's why I am so enthused every time I listen to Claire Daly speak in front of the EU. I'm like, God, at least somebody is telling the truth about what's going on here. But we need more people. And we don't have anybody in the U.S. Congress who is really talking about those issues at that level. Sorry, Ricky. Do most people in Washington know you in the area you were running? Okay, so just briefly, because I'm going to close it down at 7. So I'll give you a little bit of rundown, and 7 Pacific. So if you're on the East Coast, that's 10 p.m. I don't know where you are. I've run this race twice before. In both prior races, I got over 30,000 votes. That's not insignificant. We have a top 2 primary system here in Washington. What that means is whoever wants to run for this seat can run for it, right? We don't have a party primary. It's not the Republicans and the Democrats don't hold their own primaries. It's technically an open primary for everybody who wants to run for the seat, but not an open primary in the sense that every party can be represented. It's a top 2, quote unquote, jungle primary. Some people argue that that is harder for third parties to break into. I don't believe it is in this case. In fact, in 2018, the Republicans didn't run anybody credible, and the Republicans in my district, they know they can't win the seat, right? There's not a chance that a Republican can hold this seat with the demographics that we have. It's sort of a 65-35 Democrat-Republican split if we want to kind of Democrat left and Republican, fascist. So Republican can't win this seat. And so the most conservative thing that can happen in this district is that the incumbent gets reelected, right? But in 2018, a libertarian was on the ballot. Now, because libertarians are sort of a alternate right wing, the incumbent still won by a 2-1 margin. The incumbent has never faced anybody to the left of him in the seat. It's always been, and that's why he pretty much goes, oh, we got to keep the Republicans from winning. Well, you can, you beat the Republican every time in this district because those are the demographics of the district. But they are scared of a left challenger because if I get second place on the ballot in this top 2 primary, if it's the incumbent and me, now the demographics are very different. I can pull from that 65% and I can win. And I can also appeal to the working class Republicans who hate the Democratic Party. And I can say, look, I'm an open socialist. Green Party is a socialist party. Let's not have that argument. Let's have this argument. Do you hate the Democrats? Do you want to see a Democrat unseated? Right? Your guy is not going to win. But if you want to see the Democrat unseated, go after that guy and elect me. At least you'll get something different. You may not agree with everything I say, but at least you'll know I'm not bought off by corporations. I am for the working class. I want to make sure you have housing, and I want to make sure you have health care, and I want to make sure your kids can go to college. You cannot say that about the incumbent in this district. He works for big business. He's a management guy. So that's my appeal to the Republicans. But do most people in the district know that I'm running? Well, 30,000 people plus have voted for me in the last elections, and that was 15-ish% of the primary vote. So my name is out there. What I have to do is I have to make sure that the 89%, and it's a staggering statistic, 89% of the 18 to 34 demographic, I've got to make sure that they know that I'm running, because that's the future, right? We consider those younger voters, 18 up to 34 years old. They voted 11% in the 2022 primary. That's an abysmal statistic. So I don't want to argue about why they did. A lot of people don't even know about primaries. That's how bad our civic education is in this country, that people don't know that the path to the November election goes through your primary. And if you don't vote in the primary, you're letting other people make choices about who your final choice is going to be in November. So we've got a lot of work to do before the August 6th primary, in particular to youth voters, to say this is a campaign that stands for the future. I want you to have a well-paying job. When you come out, I want to make sure that you have guaranteed health care. I want to make sure that you have affordable housing. I don't want you to be in debt coming out of college. Those are all things that I'm going to work for. And even more importantly than that, right now, the critical issue is climate. We need to get off of fossil fuels. Younger people understand these things. And I hear a lot as I'm out there stumping and talking to people out in the streets. Younger voters say, it doesn't matter who we vote for. They're both as bad. And you know what? They're right. Right now, they are correct about that. For most people, it doesn't matter whether Republicans in office or Democrats in office. It doesn't matter. I mean, Democrats, they're what's the word? Feckless, right? Feckless or whatever it is. They use the abortion issue as a political football for 50 years, right? And they wanted to fundraise off abortion rather than taking their opportunities to say, hey, we have a majority. We're going to get this thing written into law. They decided they wanted to use it as a political football. So, I will say this, at the state level, I don't want Republicans controlling the state of Washington, but, even with the Democrats in control of the state of Washington, they're still fighting universal health care, right? They're still fighting ranked choice voting, right? We had a ranked choice voting bill in 2022, and it had passed out of committee. All it needed to do was to have Democratic leadership bring it to the floor of the House and the Senate in the Washington State Legislature for a final vote, and they refused to do it, right? Well, what they didn't want to do is have it fail because conservative Democrats wouldn't vote for it, right? So they'd rather just not bring it to the floor. And that's that's really the problem with the Republicans. I mean, with the Democrats, is that you have this spectrum of, I'm a progressive Democrat and I'm a conservative Democrat, but you're always held hostage by the conservative Democrats. And rather than the Democratic Party working to elect more progressive Democrats, what they do is they say, we can't do anything. Blame it on Joe Manchin, blame it on Kyrsten Sinema. Our hands are tied. We can't, we would rather have them in the office than, and anytime a progressive tries to run, like for me, tried to run against Rick Larson as a Democrat. Democrats hated it. They absolutely hate it. Why would you run against a sitting Democrat? Why would you? He's a good Democrat. Can I show you his voting record? He's not a good Democrat. He is in the top 15% of Democrats who vote with the Republican Party when shitty things happen. In fact, I've said this for the last four years that I've been running. Anytime you get a small handful of Democrats voting with the Republicans to do something crappy like deregulate or pass the bankruptcy bill, which Joe Biden championed also, which took student loan debt off the table, deregulation of the airline industry, deregulation of the banking industry. Anytime there's a small group of conservative Democrats that sides with the Republicans, he's with them. The guy I'm running against, he's part of that. So we can do better. But then somebody like myself steps up and I say, hey, this is a progressive district. We should have a progressive option. They work to shut me down. So why am I running as a Green Party member? One, because I'm fully aligned with Green Party principles. But two, Democrats don't like progressives. They're not a progressive party. All they like is the word progressive because they know the public is progressive, right? So, yeah, exactly, Ricky. So it's a farce. It's an absolute farce for people to think. And I say this having been a Democrat for 20 years. I served 4 years on the Washington State Democrats Central Committee, right? That's the highest governing body of Democrats in Washington State, is your state central committee. And I was there for 4 years. And what I saw is the DNC controlling the Washington State Democrats. So, people who think, oh, we got to push the Democratic Party left. Good luck. It's not happening, right? And this is why I've made a clean break from the Democrats. Finally, I've made a clean break from the Democratic Party. I'm proudly running as a Green Party member. And it's now our job as Green Party members to get out into my district. And I've got a great volunteer corps. We are going to do door knocking. We are going to get out into the... I'm holding a meeting in Oak Harbor on Sunday the 20th. If you know people on Whidbey Island, I'm going to be at the Oak Harbor Library from noon to 2. We held an event up in Bellingham. We're going to hold another event in Everett. We're going to hold another event in I'm getting out there and talking to people and hopefully inspiring people to get out and work for me and donate to my campaign. Because this is a winnable seat, People will like to do a naysaying thing. Oh, you can't beat, third parties can't win anything. This is a winnable seat, guarantee it. Especially if I get past the primary. I've got to get past the primary, August 6th. And so our work is to make sure people know that the primary election exists. There's no easier state in the entire nation to vote in than Washington State. So there's no excuse. All you got to do is go online to the Secretary of State. You got to put in your information so that they know you're a real person, and you'll be registered to vote. We have same day registration. We have, if you go to get your driver's license when you're 16, they'll pre-register you. Right? So when you're then automatically registered when you turn 18, like my son, he was pre-registered when he got his license. He's going to be voting in November. He turned 18 3 days ago. So he can vote in this primary and he can vote in November. So, and I sow those values to my kids, voting is important. And that doesn't mean that elections are the be all and end all of everything because, as I said, what can I do as a Green Party member? Can I move mountains? I can't. What I can do is consistently and on principle give voice to the issues that are important to the future. Like, people will say, people look at Bernie Sanders and say, well, Bernie never got anything done. There's no bills there with Bernie's name in. Because I say Bernie's not a careerist, even though he's, that's great. That's great. Jill Stein polling at 6% nationally. That's actually really good. That's really good. Nowhere to go but up. But what has Bernie done over his entire year? And, I'm disappointed in Bernie right now. I don't want to go down that road, but, I just sort of nod and acknowledge that. But over his entire year, Bernie has worked to make bad legislation better. So he doesn't get a prize for that, right? He doesn't get a medal for that. His name's not on the bill. But that's why they called him the Amendment King. So, my goal in there is, it's not to say that I can go in and, I'm going to be able to force Medicare for all. But I can wake people up and I can use my platform and I can stand on principle. And, I will make the point again that we don't have almost anybody. There's maybe a couple, but not consistently. Almost nobody in Congress is speaking consistently, or I say nobody is speaking consistently, but almost nobody is speaking at all about the real issues that are going to affect our future. So that is my goal there, to have that national presence. Where what did Ida say? Evergreen candidate for the Evergreen state. I like it. Let's keep it. All right, that is a positive note to end on. Callforcongress.com. Reach out to my campaign. Give us some money if you got some money. We definitely need it. It's very hard to raise money as a progressive candidate. But, here's the thing is like the money, even though we need the money because we got to stay operational, right? We actually literally do need money to have printed materials and to keep our networks running and all of that kind of stuff and to pay our staff. But the money is not going to win the race. The integrity and the inspiration and the effort and people supporting the campaign and getting out on the streets and making sure that they're sharing it in their networks, that is what's gonna win the race. And so I hope me coming on TikTok Live and talking to you guys like this, letting you know who I am, what I stand for. I'm a real person. You can tell that I don't have much of a filter here. Like if you ask, not that anybody's really asked me questions, which I'm hoping people would do. But, if you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an honest answer about what I think. I'm not going to be like, I wonder what my donors are going to think if I say this thing. And so I'm not going to say this thing, or I'm not going to stand for this thing because I'm really working for their donors and I'm really working for re-election rather than I'm working for my constituents. No, I'm 100% here for the people of this district and the people of this country and the people of this world, because Americans are not more important than, the people who are getting bombed in Palestine right now. And I want to make sure that is absolutely understood. We have to, and I'll close in just a second. I'm going to DC for the march on Saturday. I am proud and grateful to have the opportunity to be out there and participate in that. Wherever you are in your local community, find your event, be there. This Saturday needs to be a massive outpouring of support for the Palestinian people and against this genocide that our government is funding. It's an absolute atrocity. And I will continue to speak out about it. In fact, that's most of my TikToks are me, at protests and speaking out against this thing. So in all the things that I have said here today, I do not want to forget that we are in a moment of history where we are witnessing a genocide happening in front of us, fully supported by the majority of Congress. I mean, I think there's less than 30, should say fewer than 30 members of Congress who have spoken out against what is, our funding of the Zionist assault on Palestine right now and Palestinian people. It's really atrocious. Sign up for my email list. If you go to callforcongress.com, my website, sign up for my email list, and so you'll get my, we sent out an email yesterday about Al Jazeera reporter Wael al-Dawood, whose son Hamza was killed in an airstrike. And back in October, much of Wael's family was killed in an Israeli airstrike. And an airstrike on a house where they had been told to go to. I mean, this is what the IDF is doing. They are saying, hey, move to these areas. And then they're bombing those areas. And so we are being witness to war crimes, right? It's unlike, and I'm somebody who has protested war my entire life. Like, my first activism was protesting the Desert Storm War in 1990 when we went to war over Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait, which was all based on falsehoods, right? Saddam's throwing babies out of incubators, and and I'm not going to defend Saddam Hussein, but it's nothing we needed to go to war for. In fact, if you want to know the truth of why we went to how we ended up going to war in Iraq in 1990, Saddam Hussein, who at one point was our ally because we were using him as a proxy to fight the Iranians in the mid-'80s, that whole Iran-Iraq war from 82, 83 to 88, that was us using Saddam Hussein, who was our bad guy, to fight the Iranians in the mid-'80s. Anyway, so Saddam Hussein came to the United States and he said, hey, Kuwait is drilling sideways into Iraqi oil fields. You want to help us out here? We don't want to go to war with Kuwait, and we know you don't want us to go to war with Kuwait. So could maybe you use your influence to stop Kuwait drilling into Iraqi oil fields? And the United States said, we're not taking any position on this. This is a border dispute between you and Kuwait. And so Saddam Hussein said, all right, well, I guess I got to handle it myself. And so he invaded Kuwait. And then we said, oh, look at Saddam Hussein, the bad guy now, right? So the geopolitics is just, I mean, it's dirty and it's disgusting. And, you know, I'll say right now, the United States is not a great player in this. I mean, we work for global capitalists and multinationals and the war machine. And if I get to Congress, I'm going to speak out against that. People say, "Whoa, why are you so anti-American?" I'm like, I don't agree with my America. It's not that I'm not against the American people, right? I'm against the crimes that our government commits. Like, if you can't hold your own government responsible and criticize your own government for the crimes that they commit, you're not living in a democracy, right? That's not a free country. We have to have the freedom to criticize our country when we do bad stuff, and we do a lot of bad stuff. So we have to, exactly, Ricky, thank you. It is criticism in order to help Americans, but also to help the world, right? It's not just about helping Americans, it's about helping the world, because in a global sense, we are all equal, right? And we have to start seeing each other that way. So, all right, I've gone 10 minutes over what I was expecting. So anyway, I will do another live. I will schedule these. I will try and advertise it next time. I did not advertise this. I kind of just hopped on and did the thing. But I will advertise it next time, and we'll come back. And I hope people will come with questions. Now you've got me. So Bashy. We'll do a live. I'm gonna try for once a week. You know, maybe we'll do more. But the smoking green part. Let me grab this right here. Like, how many congressional candidates are gonna do this? Right? Okay, homegrown. So the reason I have bags of homegrown lying around my house is because I'm a home grower. Hey, okay, Austin. Don't show this on live. No. Are we going to get in trouble for that? It's legal here in Washington State, so I don't care, you know. So I grow my own weed, but I was part of the team that got it legal here in Washington State. And Washington State was, so it's a TikTok thing. Okay, I didn't know. Well, it's done is done. But let's talk about the weed issue, which is another issue that the Biden administration is not handling, although they're claiming to, right? Oh, we commuted the sentences of like 40 people, right? Because their sentences were way too long. People shouldn't be in jail for weed. So, yeah, freedom on social media. Freedom to talk about whatever we want to on social media. Oh, goodness. But anyway, I helped get it legal here in Washington State in 2012. Washington was the first state in the country, along with Colorado. We both legalized it at the same time. But I spent weeks and weeks and weeks signature gathering for this back in 2012, and I'm very proud of our efforts that we got it here. And if I can shit talk the incumbent, four times in his career. Now he's supposedly he's voted for the MORE Act. It's called the MORE Act now, which will federally legalize weed and get the banking systems, because we have these legal weed shops here who can't use the banking systems because it's still federally illegal. So that's why you have to buy everything in cash. You can't use your card. You can take cash out on your card in the store, but you have to pay for it with cash. So now there's a bill in Congress, which is thankfully supported by most Democrats, to change that system. But prior to 2020, and again, prior to me challenging him, he voted 4 times to let the Department of Justice, not Department of Justice, the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, prosecute people for weed in states where it was already legal, you know? So he's way behind the times on social issues. You know, I guess we'll leave it at that. So I'll try and be back here, advertise it better. People bring questions. You know, obviously I have no filter, and I will talk about just about anything, certainly any political topic. And peace out, free Palestine. Thank you. Now I don't know how to turn the damn thing off. which was the same thing from, oh, there's a button up in the corner. All right, everybody, I'm actually going to be live streaming on, Ricky, what do you mean mostly populated with what? I mean, with people. Uh-oh. So my live may contain themes not suitable for younger audience, so I've been age restricted already. Okay. I won't show weed again. Violation. I am flagged for harassment and bullying. Well, that didn't happen. Goodness. I don't know. I don't know how we got flagged for harassment and bullying there. I don't know the age demographics. I know that we're probably about 67% white. We have Asian populations, Latino populations. We got a lot of farm workers in the district here. It's a mix of, our district is not that different from many, many other districts. One of the big differences in our district is we are very, very coastal. And this is one of the things that I've tried to get people to wake up to. When the tides start rising, it's hitting us first. Like we're gonna have massive impacts from rising tides in this district. I don't think people are prepared for it. I really don't. And they're not thinking towards the future. I mean, even when I started running this race in 2020, I said we need to be looking for the future and taking our communities inland if we're not going to do anything about, actually dealing with climate change. So anyway, very, very funny. So, I mean, I would say yes in terms of left-leaning, and this is why I say a Republican will never win this seat. Like, the demographics of this district are not such that a Republican will win it. So a conservative Democrat has been winning the district for the last 20 years because nobody has challenged him from the left. Like, once a Democrat's in office, they're like, oh, well, this is our guy. We'll just keep a Democrat in office. They're, quote unquote, a good Democrat. But yeah, I mean, I this is why I say if I can get on the ballot next to the incumbent and it's me and conservative Democrat Rick Larson, I can win the seat. I think that is the demographics of this district, is that they will choose a true progressive over a conservative Democrat. So if that clarifies it all. So, okay, we got flagged for harassment. We got flagged for age-restricted content. Very, very strange. I get the age-restricted stuff with the talking about weed, but certainly no harassment or bullying. Anyway, I am going to be at live streaming from the march on Saturday. So in DC, I will do a live stream as the march is going on, probably some of the speakers and maybe some commentary, but I will do some live streaming on Saturday. All right, now for real. Peace, free Palestine. If I can turn this stuff off.